Okay, folks, I am here by myself without Larry. Larry was just finishing up with Jason. I don't know if they're quite done yet, but I thought I would go ahead and get this started. And let's see, I've got still waiting for starting. We should be live, so I'm waiting to see my phone come up showing it's live, and it's not showing that yet. So give me a minute. Let me just pull it up. One of the things I wanted to do something a little different today. Okay, here we go. So I can see the chat. I'm gonna do something a little different today. I told Larry what I was gonna do. I said I promised not to preach because I'm no preacher, but I did want to address something that came up in a couple phone calls I got yesterday. Excuse me, I've got to see if this is Larry. No. Hey, Sandy, I'm live on YouTube. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. It's part of our team. Okay. I got a couple calls yesterday from people who were talking about Larry. They're trying to encourage others to support Larry, to support what we're doing, encouraging people to buy the t-shirt here, Never Socialism with the V for Victory, Nichols Army. You can get the shirt, by the way, without Nichols Army if you don't want to include that. But some people are having trouble because when they talk to friends, relatives, they go and look up Larry on Google. And what do you come up with? You come up with some lies that were told about him. I know somebody who has done some of the things that are out there in the political, I forgot what they're called, political reports, I think they're called. I know who wrote those things, and they're not true. And I know what the circumstances were surrounding them, and it's just fabricated. And I know there's a lot of bad stuff out there about Larry, things that are not true, things that supposedly he said in an interview, except he was just calling to schedule an interview, and the tape started running, and they turned on the recorder and recorded him saying things when he was just coming out of anesthesia and was off his rocker. You know, he's talked about kill them while they're young, which basically means nip it in the bud. Don't let this get out of hand. Stop it right away. And he mentioned killing for the Clintons. Well, that's what he did. You know, he would destroy people's character. If they couldn't get somebody in trouble, they'd make it up that they wanted to get rid of. And I wanted to discuss the whole concept of God's forgiveness. And I was reading in the Gospels today. I'm part of a reading group on Facebook that's reading through the Gospels. And I wanted to mention some things that I came across this morning in what I was reading. I'm going to start in Matthew 7, verses 15 to 20. It says, watch out for false prophets. Larry does not tell us something that is not true. If he cannot verify and prove it in a court of law, he is very, very, very careful to make sure that he says, this is my opinion. If he tells us something, he has gotten it from the most reliable source at high levels. So false prophets will come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. Now Larry's a good soldier. He was well trained, but that does not make him a ferocious wolf. He was maybe a ferocious wolf with the Clintons, with what he did, but he left them back in 1989. That was a long, long time ago, 30 years ago. It says, by their fruit, you will recognize them. He's not still doing the things that he did with the Clintons. He has spent the last 30 years telling the truth about the Clintons, fighting for righteousness, trying to help our country get back to what it's supposed to be that our founding fathers wanted us to have. And he worked very hard to try and keep Bill Clinton out of the White House. He failed in that, but he tried very hard. And that's why he was working so hard all these last 30 years to stop the criminal cabal that is in charge of nearly everything. So back to these. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. Okay, back in the day, there was some bad fruit going on because everybody around the Clintons, you had to take the fall. The Clintons were not to be touched. And Larry left when he realized that what he had uncovered was going to mean he was going to take the fall for it. And he wasn't willing to do that. And so he left. And people ask, well, why hasn't he been archon-cited? Well, don't believe me. Don't you ever think that they haven't tried. I'm aware of at least 30 attempts on his life last year. And I know there were more than that. So how does he survive? Well, God's not done with him yet. And there are many of us who believe very, very strongly that, like Queen Esther, he was allowed to go through that for such a time as this, because he may not be the only person who knows these things, but there are very, very few people, if any, willing to talk about what he talks about. He's probably the only one to say the things that he says. And that puts him in grave danger. And like it says here, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Let's see, that is up to verse 20. And then I'm going to go over to Luke. Luke, at the beginning of Luke, says a lot of similar things to what it says in Matthew. And I'm going to look at Luke chapter 6 and chapter 7. Luke 6:26. No, that's 30. Let's see, Luke 6:26. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for that is how their fathers treat the false prophets. Okay, we know people do not treat Larry well. And the flip of that, woe to you if they treat you well, well, we should be blessing him for what he is having to go through for the sake of speaking the truth. And chapter 7, I'm going to start at verse 40. Jesus said, I have something to tell you. 2 men owed money to a certain money lender. One owed him 500 days' wages, the other 50 days' wages. Neither of them had the money to pay back, so he canceled the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt that was canceled. You have judged correctly, said Jesus. And then Jesus also said, you didn't give me any water for my feet, but this woman has wet my feet with her tears. You didn't give me a kiss. This woman has not stopped kissing me. I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who has been forgiven very little loves little. So what I wanted to say about that, here's this example of this woman who's been forgiven a lot. The Pharisees that were there at that dinner at Simon's house were all upset. Don't you realize who's touching you, who's kissing your feet? And Jesus told this story on her behalf. So I want to say to those of you who are upset about what Larry did in the past and don't want to support because of who he was, he is a man who has a very strong faith in God. And there are at least 3 instances when I have heard him pray on the conference call and here on YouTube. And the things that he said in his prayer, I mean, they're the best prayers I think I've ever heard anybody pray. That's my opinion, but I have had other people tell me the same thing. And so I'm saying to you, excuse me, sorry, I bumped the table. Please be careful about your criticism of Larry Nichols. Remember the scripture, I think it's Matthew 7, that says, "Judge not, that you be not judged." And don't forget about the woman who was caught in adultery, where Jesus turned to everybody who wanted to stone her because that was the typical punishment. If you're without sin, go ahead, cast the first stone. So let's be careful when we're pointing the finger at somebody, how many fingers are pointing back at us. And I would like to say, Larry needs help to be able to continue doing what he's doing. He has not been paid for all the stories that he has told on air. People, Star Magazine, National Enquirer offered to pay him back in the day. He refused all of that. He felt that that was a way of maintaining his integrity, that he wasn't going to fudge his story because he was being paid. He's in desperate straits financially, and he needs help. And he needs help on an ongoing basis. And here we are looking at towards the 2020 elections. He wants to help run campaigns for people who will run under never socialism. Will you do some things to help? Here are some ideas. I'd like you to share the videos that you find here on this channel. Hit the like button. Share them. Go ahead and make comments. And please, please go to his PayPal, nicholslive@aol.com, and do something to help. Do something. It's urgently needed. And anything you can do to help us find candidates. Talk to your doctor. Talk to nurses. Talk to teachers. Talk to your pastor. Talk to businessmen in your community. See if there is somebody willing to run for office who will go under the Never Socialism banner. We will, if they will pay their filing fee, we will help them. If we can get 100 people across the country, that's 2 per state, for all the districts that are in every, especially these big states. And some states can have, I mean, we want a minimum of 100. Ideally, we want to replace everybody in Congress. They need to go. We need fresh people with new ideas who are not part of this cabal. And we will help. The media will help get them elected, just like it did with President Trump. We need people running under Never Socialism, helping to get the word out. And please, folks, this t-shirt is a way to talk about it. And if you have ideas, we are putting together some other ideas of some other things that we can do to promote the Never Socialism message. If you've got any ideas, please contact us and let us know. We do not have a conference call today. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about Chapter 5 in Larry's book, 28 Years to Nowhere, that I helped him write. We'd love to have you join us at 8 o'clock Central Time tomorrow night. In the meantime, thank you for anything and everything you can do to help Larry, to help us find candidates to run, to help us find people who will participate in making phone calls when the day comes very soon when we need to start doing that. Larry needs to make sure we've got at least 1,000 people to do what needs to be done. So find other people that you listen to on YouTube, get their contact information. You can write them yourself, or you can give their contact information to me, and I will send out an email to people. And we need to start asking, will you help promote the Never Socialism message and get people who are willing to make phone calls? We don't have to have everybody's email. If they want to hang on to their mailing list, that's fine. But we just need to know people who are willing to share. When we're putting out the message, time for action, we need people who are willing to ask their people to take action. So please step up and help us in some way. And I'm just looking at the chat. The V on the shirt is victory. Larry's very military oriented with all his military service. And so we've got Nichols Army here underneath, under Nichols Army under the shirt. The V stands for victory. We want victory over socialism. And so that's why we're flying the flag, never socialism, and we are demanding in this gold V stands for victory that we are hoping to have. Tom suggests that there are people who need to stay in Congress. We do have a few that are good. We do. And if you don't want to compete against them, that's, your choice. But we need to replace everybody. And yes, there are a few people that are really trying to do what's good, but they've been there. When somebody's been there more than 2 terms, they're not allowed to stay unless they've been compromised. Remember that. So that's it for today, folks. I'm just going to say Larry's PayPal again is nicholslive@aol.com. There are alternative ideas on the website, nicholslive.com. Please do whatever you can. And thanks a lot. We'll talk tomorrow. Bye.